The vast council chamber of Andaris Prime glittered with the cold luminescence of 1,000 crystalline panels, each pulsing faintly in rhythm with the station's life support systems. At the center of the chamber, the victors and vanquished of the Galactic War faced one another, separated by a polished obsidian table that seemed too pristine to host such heavy decisions. On one side, humanity's representatives sat rigid, their faces etched with the fatigue of war and the cautious hope of survival. Admiral Myra Detrell, her uniform adorned with faded commendations, presided over them with a stony expression, her gaze fixed on the alien woman seated across from her. Commander Zevara of the Oran Dominion was unlike any adversary humanity had faced. Her iridescent skin shimmered subtly with colors that shifted like oil on water, and her long braided hair, silver and streaked with violet, framed sharp, otherworldly features. Her eyes, an unsettling shade of deep cerulean, seemed to pierce through the very fabric of pretense. She was clad in ceremonial armor that exuded an air of power, sleek, almost organic, and faintly glowing along its seams. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but carried the weight of someone unaccustomed to being challenged. "We have no need for your precious metals or your technology. The Oran Dominion seeks only one thing from humanity, as a gesture of peace." The room held its collective breath. "I request—" Zevara paused, her gaze sweeping over the humans like a hawk sizing up its prey. "Sergeant Ezra Colby." The silence that followed was so profound it seemed to absorb the chamber's ambient hum. Every face turned toward Ezra, who was leaning back in his chair at the far end of the human delegation, a half-eaten protein bar dangling from his hand. Ezra blinked. I'm sorry, I think I misheard. Did you just say me?" Zevara's expression remained unreadable, though there was a flicker of something, amusement, in her gaze. "Yes, you." The chamber erupted. Military advisors and diplomats burst into frantic whispers, their voices overlapping in a chaotic cacophony. "Why him?" one advisor demanded, his face flushed. "This is highly irregular," barked another. Ezra raised his hand. "Yeah, I'd like to second that. Also, third it. What the hell is going on?" Admiral Detrell rapped the table for silence, though her own composure seemed precarious. "Commander Zevara," she said, her voice tight, "Sergeant Colby is a decorated soldier. He is not a commodity to be traded." "I am not proposing a trade," Zevara replied evenly. "This is my sole request. The terms of peace hinge upon it." Ezra snorted. "Wow. No pressure, huh?" Detrell shot him a glare that could have melted titanium. "Sergeant, not now." But Zevara's gaze was fixed solely on Ezra. "You intrigue me, Sergeant Colby. During the war, your actions stood out, not merely for your skill, but for your unique approach to conflict." Ezra rubbed the back of his neck. "If by unique you mean the time I convinced an Oran battle droid to self-destruct by pretending to be its long-lost uncle, then yeah, I guess I've got a signature style." A ripple of laughter, nervous, incredulous, swept through the human side of the room. Zevara's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, a sight so rare it sent a shiver down the spine of her own delegation. Admiral Detrell leaned forward, her tone icy. "Commander, I fail to see how this request is relevant to our negotiations." "It is relevant because I deem it so," Zevara replied, her calm demeanor unshaken. "The Oran Dominion seeks understanding. Sergeant Colby embodies the spirit of your species in a way no artifact or treaty could convey." Ezra raised both hands in mock surrender. "Look, I'm flattered, really. But I don't think I'm exactly ambassador material. I mean, I once got demoted for setting off a fireworks display during a supply run. Long story, but it turns out alien sparklers are a lot more combustible than Earth ones." A few chuckles escaped the human delegation, but Detrell's scowl deepened. "Sergeant, enough." Zevara tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made Ezra squirm. "Your humor is unorthodox, but it serves as a defense mechanism, does it not? A way to navigate chaos." Ezra scratched his chin. "Or maybe I'm just naturally charming. Hard to say." The alien commander leaned back, her expression inscrutable once more. My request stands. If humanity values peace, it will grant me this. The chamber descended into chaos again, but Ezra found himself oddly calm. He wasn't sure whether to be flattered, terrified, or deeply concerned that his life had become the punchline to some interstellar joke. Finally, Admiral Detrell called for a recess, and the human delegation retreated to a private chamber. Ezra, despite his protests, was dragged along. "This is absurd," Detrell fumed. "We cannot allow her to take one of our soldiers as if he were some kind of intergalactic door prize," Ezra offered helpfully. The Admiral shot him a look that could have vaporized asteroids. "You're not helping." Ezra sighed, leaning against the wall. "Look, I'm as confused as anyone, but if she's serious about this being the only thing she wants, maybe we should consider it. I mean, it beats handing over a moon or something, right?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Detrell exhaled heavily. "We'll deliberate. But know this, Sergeant. If we agree to this, your actions will reflect on all of humanity. You cannot afford to make a mockery of this situation." Ezra grinned, his usual irreverence shining through. "No promises, ma'am, but I'll do my best to make humanity look slightly less embarrassing than we already do." As the delegation filed out, Ezra remained behind for a moment, staring out the viewport at the Oran flagship looming against the stars. "Well," he muttered to himself, "this should be interesting." The Oran flagship, the opalescent star, loomed like a colossal jewel suspended in the void. Its surface shimmered with shifting hues, casting an eerie, hypnotic glow over the small human shuttle carrying Sergeant Ezra Colby toward his improbable new destiny. Ezra sat strapped into his seat, staring at the alien craft through the shuttle's viewport, his thoughts a tangle of unease and disbelief. "Still can't believe this is happening," he muttered, breaking the silence. Across from him, Lieutenant Mallory, the shuttle's pilot, raised an eyebrow. "Honestly, neither can I. You must have made one hell of an impression." Ezra smirked. "Impression? Sure. I've got a gift for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Guess it finally paid off." Mallory chuckled, shaking her head. "You realize they might dissect you, right?" Ezra leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head. I figure if they wanted to dissect me, they'd start with someone less sarcastic. My body's probably 60% snark by now. It'd ruin their instruments." The shuttle docked with the opalescent star in a seamless ballet of light and movement. As the airlock hissed open, a delegation of Oran awaited them, their glowing attire and unnervingly symmetrical features making Ezra feel like he'd stepped into a fashion-forward fever dream. One of them stepped forward, tall and composed, with eyes the color of a summer sky. "Welcome, Sergeant Colby. I am First Advisor Koresh. Commander Zavara awaits you." Ezra glanced at Mallory. "Well, guess this is where I get probed." He turned back to Koresh with a grin. "Lead the way, Chief." Koresh blinked, clearly unsure what to make of the comment, but said nothing as he gestured for Ezra to follow. The corridors of the opalescent star were an exercise in otherworldly design. Organic curves replaced sharp edges, and the walls pulsed faintly, as if alive. Strange, luminescent flora lined the hallways, casting a soft, bioluminescent glow that reminded Ezra of deep-sea creatures. "Nice digs," Ezra quipped. "I'm guessing your decorator skipped IKEA." Koresh didn't respond, though one of the other Orans seemed to stifle a chuckle. Eventually, they reached a set of towering doors that opened with a whisper, revealing a chamber bathed in silver light. At its center stood Commander Zavara, her armor exchanged for a flowing robe that shimmered like liquid metal. She looked up as Ezra entered, her piercing gaze locking onto his with an intensity that made him momentarily forget how to breathe. "Sergeant Colby," she said, her voice smooth and measured. "Welcome to the opalescent star. I trust your journey was uneventful." Ezra gave a mock salute. Uneventful as a trip to the DMV, except with fewer forms and more existential dread. Zavara tilted her head, the faintest hint of amusement flickering across her features. "Your humor remains singular." "What can I say? It's a coping mechanism," Ezra replied, shoving his hands into his pockets. "So, what's the plan, Commander? Are we doing trust falls, or should I just start handing out dating resumes?" A ripple of laughter swept through the Orin attendants, though they quickly stifled it under Zavara's sharp glance. She dismissed them with a wave of her hand, leaving only her and Ezra in the chamber. "You misunderstand the purpose of your presence here," Zavara said, stepping closer. "This is not a mere whim, Sergeant. You represent something rare, something I believe my people and yours must learn from." Ezra raised an eyebrow. "I'm flattered, really, but I think you might be overestimating me. I'm just a guy who survived because I'm good at running and talking my way out of trouble." Zavara's expression softened, her gaze thoughtful. "Perhaps. Or perhaps that adaptability is precisely why you are here. Humor, after all, is not a trait we Orin cultivate. It is foreign to us, yet it intrigues me." Ezra couldn't help but chuckle. "So, you're saying I'm some kind of intergalactic comedy ambassador? Should I start with knock-knock jokes, or do you prefer puns?" Zavara didn't laugh, but her lips twitched in a way that suggested she was trying to suppress one. "There is time to explore that later. For now, I have arranged quarters for you. I trust you will find them comfortable." Ezra's quarters turned out to be far more luxurious than he'd expected. The bed was a marvel of alien engineering, adjusting its shape and firmness as he lay on it. A console on the wall displayed holographic projections of Orin landscapes, their colors vivid and surreal. He paced the room, trying to process the surreal turn his life had taken. He was used to danger, sure, but this wasn't the kind he could punch or shoot his way out of. Just as he was contemplating whether the glowing orb in the corner was a lamp or some kind of alien surveillance device, the door chimed. "Enter," he called, half expecting Zavara herself. Instead, it was Koresh, holding a tray with what looked like a bowl of shimmering liquid. "Your evening sustenance," Koresh announced, setting it down on a nearby table. Ezra eyed the bowl suspiciously. "Is it gonna sprout tentacles and try to eat me?" Koresh frowned. "It is nutrient-rich synth gel. Quite palatable." Ezra grabbed a spoon and scooped up a bit of the gel, sniffing it cautiously before taking a tentative bite. To his surprise, it tasted like a mix of honey and citrus. "Not bad," he admitted before smirking. "But if this is alien haute cuisine, you're gonna love Earth tacos." Koresh gave him a blank look. "Tacos?" Ezra grinned. "Stick around, Koresh. I'll change your life." Later that night, as he lay in the shifting embrace of the alien bed, Ezra stared at the ceiling, which displayed a soft aurora-like glow. "What the hell have I gotten myself into?" he muttered to himself. Somewhere in the vast ship, Zavara stood on a balcony overlooking the stars, her thoughts lingering on the strange human, now under her care. For the first time in a long while, she felt the faint stirrings of something she couldn't quite name. And, in his own way, Ezra was beginning to feel it too. Morning, or whatever passed for it on an alien ship orbiting in deep space, arrived with a soft chiming noise, and the walls of Ezra's quarters gradually brightening from violet to gold. Ezra groaned, rolling over in the bed that had somehow contorted itself into the perfect shape to support his sleep-twisted limbs. "Great, my alarm clock has a light show," he muttered, swinging his legs out of bed. He squinted at the holographic panel on the wall. "Is this thing touchscreen or mind-reading? Because I gotta warn you, I think in cartoons before coffee." Before he could poke at the display, the door slid open, and Koresh stepped in, his posture as stiff and formal as ever. "Good morning, Sergeant Colby," Koresh said, his voice devoid of any of the cheerfulness the phrase usually implied. "The commander requests your presence in the observation chamber." Ezra smirked. "Let me guess, she finally wants to hear that knock-knock joke I've been working on." Koresh blinked. "Knock, knock?" "It's a human thing," Ezra said, waving a hand. "Lead on, Chief. Let's see what the commander has cooked up for me today." The observation chamber turned out to be a vast, dome-like room with a panoramic view of the stars. The floor was a seamless expanse of reflective material that gave the unnerving impression of walking on glass suspended in the void. Ezra did his best not to look down too much. Commander Zevara stood at the center, gazing out at the swirling nebulae beyond. Her robe today was a deep, shimmering indigo, and her silver hair was loosely braided, falling over one shoulder. "You wanted to see me?" Ezra said, stepping into the room. "Or is this just a scenic spot for some light existential pondering?" Zevara turned, her expression as composed as ever. "Sergeant Colby, I hope you're finding your accommodation suitable." Ezra shrugged. "Can't complain. Your nutrient gel's pretty tasty, and the bed's smarter than I am. Although I gotta say, your TV options are lacking. No reruns of Galaxy Cop, Space Justice. A real travesty." Zevara tilted her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I'm unfamiliar with this Space Justice, but perhaps it is something you can enlighten us about in time." "Careful what you wish for," Ezra said with a grin. Zevara gestured toward the stars. "Do you know where we are, Sergeant?" Ezra squinted at the swirling colors of the nebula. "Somewhere far enough from Earth that my Amazon Prime membership's useless?" She didn't laugh, but the slight lift of her eyebrows suggested she found his quips amusing. "This is the Vorel Expanse, a region of space unclaimed by any faction, yet rich with phenomena that remain unexplored even by my people." Ezra crossed his arms. "Sounds pretty, but I'm guessing you didn't bring me here for a sightseeing tour. What's the deal, Commander? You keep saying I'm here for some grand purpose, but all I've done so far is crack jokes and confuse your crew." Zevara's gaze turned serious, the levity in her expression fading. "You are here because you represent something my people have lost, or perhaps never truly possessed. Resilience, adaptability, and something far less tangible but equally vital." Ezra raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Charm, good looks, and impeccable comic timing?" "Humor," Zevara said, her tone firm. "The ability to find light in darkness. It is an alien concept to us, yet one I believe holds great value." Ezra blinked. "Wait, are you saying you don't have humor? Like, at all?" Zevara hesitated. "Not in the way humans do. For the Auran, emotions are controlled, disciplined. What you call humor often appears to us as frivolous or irrational. But during the war, I observed how your kind used it to endure even the direst situations. I believe there is strength in it, a strength we must learn if we are to coexist." Ezra scratched his head. "So let me get this straight. You picked me because I'm the class clown?" Zevara's lips twitched again, but her expression remained composed. "If that is how you wish to frame it, then yes." Ezra couldn't help but laugh. "Well, I guess I've been called worse. So what's next? Comedy lessons. Should I start with slapstick or work my way up to stand-up?" "There is something I wish to show you first," Zevara said, turning back toward the stars. Moments later, Ezra found himself in a smaller chamber filled with holographic displays and strange instruments that hummed faintly. In the center of the room was a pedestal holding a crystal-like object that pulsed with a soft inner light. "This," Zevara said, gesturing to the object, "is an Auran memory shard. It contains the recorded experiences of one of our most revered thinkers." "Neat," Ezra said, leaning closer. "Looks like a fancy paperweight. What's it do?" Zevara placed her hand over the shard, and the room filled with a cascade of images and sounds, alien landscapes, mathematical equations, and snatches of conversation in a melodic, untranslatable language. "It is a repository of knowledge," Zevara explained. "Each shard is a fragment of our collective understanding. But there are gaps, concepts we cannot fully grasp because they lie outside our experience." Ezra nodded slowly, beginning to see where this was going. "And you think I can help fill those gaps? With humor?" "Among other things," Zevara said, "your perspective is unique. Your ability to think laterally, to find meaning in chaos. It is something we Auran lack. I believe you can teach us, even as we teach you." Ezra scratched his chin. "You know, most people just ask for a PowerPoint presentation. But hey, if you want to go full interstellar think tank, I'm game." Zevara inclined her head. "I appreciate your willingness, Sergeant." "Willingness?" Ezra said with a smirk. Let's just say I'm curious where this roller coaster's headed, but don't blame me if your people start telling bad dad jokes by the end of this." Zavara's faint smile returned. "I shall consider that a risk worth taking." As Ezra left the chamber, he found himself thinking about Zavara's words. For all his bravado and sarcasm, he couldn't deny the strange sense of purpose her mission gave him. "Guess I'm not just comic relief anymore," he muttered, a small grin tugging at his lips. Somewhere in the depths of the opalescent star, Zavara watched the memory shard flicker and wondered if, perhaps, she had found more in Ezra than she had intended. Ezra stood in the middle of what the Orin called the Harmony Hall, a sprawling chamber with concentric rings of seating that radiated from a central dais. Every detail of the room, its glowing walls, softly resonating hum, and shifting holograms, was designed to create an aura of calm and order. It would have been impressive, even majestic, if not for one glaring issue. It was packed to the brim with solemn-faced Orin, all staring at him expectantly. "This," Ezra muttered under his breath, "is how I die." Zavara stepped to his side, her presence calm but commanding. "The Harmony Assembly is eager to witness your methods firsthand, Sergeant Colby. I trust you are ready." "Ready? Sure," Ezra said, giving her a sidelong glance. "I've done tons of stand-up in front of an alien audience with zero sense of humor. Happens all the time." Zavara regarded him with a faint smile that bordered on sympathy. "They are not here to judge, but to learn. Simply speak as you would among your own kind." Ezra raised an eyebrow. "You've clearly never met my kind. We heckle for sport." Still, he stepped onto the dais, taking a deep breath as the shimmering holographic lights adjusted to spotlight him. The murmurs of the assembled Orin faded, their bioluminescent eyes fixed on him with unnerving intensity. Ezra cleared his throat. "All right," he began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Let's start with something simple. A question. What's the deal with spaceship food?" Silence. "See, on Earth," Ezra continued, undeterred, "people complain about airplane food. But trust me, after a week of nutrient gel, I'd trade an entire Orin starfighter for a bag of airline peanuts." A few Orin blinked. One in the back tilted their head, clearly pondering the concept of peanuts. "Okay, tough crowd," Ezra said with a grin. "Let's switch gears. You know what my first thought was when I stepped onto your ship? Wow, these guys have really nailed the whole glowing everything aesthetic. Are you secretly powered by rave music?" This earned him a quiet, startled chuckle from one of the younger Orin near the front. It wasn't much, but it was enough to embolden him. As the session progressed, Ezra leaned into his strength, telling stories. He regaled the assembly with tales of his basic training mishaps, exaggerated accounts of Earth's peculiar customs, and even an entirely fictional account of a human Orin dance-off during the war, complete with slapstick descriptions of alien missteps. By the time he reached the punchline of a particularly absurd anecdote involving an exploding hover scooter, a ripple of laughter swept through the hall. It wasn't the roaring kind he was used to on Earth, but it was genuine, and it sparked something almost electric in the air. Zavara, watching from the sidelines, noted the subtle shifts in her people's demeanor, the slight loosening of their postures, the flickers of curiosity and amusement. She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. When Ezra finished, he stepped down from the dais, wiping an imaginary bead of sweat from his brow. "Well, that was a rush. Think I earned a medal for bravery in there?" "You did well," Zavara said, her tone warm. "Though I suspect you enjoyed yourself more than you anticipated." Ezra smirked. "Hey, if you can make aliens laugh at a fart joke, you're basically invincible." Zavara arched an eyebrow. "Fart joke?" "Don't worry about it," Ezra said quickly, waving a hand. "You've got bigger fish to fry. Speaking of which, do you guys have fish? Because I could really go for some tacos right now." Later, as Ezra strolled through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, Koresh appeared at his side. The Orin advisor's expression was as neutral as ever, but Ezra could swear there was a faint air of bemusement about him. "Your presentation was unconventional," Koresh said after a moment. Unconventional is my middle name, Ezra replied. Well, technically it's David, but unconventional sounds cooler. Koresh blinked. I fail to see how humor serves a practical function. Laughter does not resolve conflict or enhance productivity. Ezra stopped walking and turned to face him. You're not wrong, Koresh. Laughter doesn't build spaceships or win wars. But you know what it does? It makes all the tough stuff a little easier to handle. It reminds people they're not alone. And sometimes that's enough to get through the worst days. Koresh tilted his head, as if analyzing Ezra's words from every angle. Fascinating. And yet, it seems inefficient. Life's not always efficient, Ezra said with a shrug, but it's a hell of a lot better with a few laughs along the way.